Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to my July wrap-up. I used to do my reviews every 3 months, so like every season was how I did it, but I started reading a lot more, so now I'm going to be doing them at the end of every month until I don't want to do that anymore. So this will be my July wrap-up and one book that I read at the end of June that wasn't in my previous wrap-up. So let's just get started. The first book that I read was Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. This is a classic, clearly, about two sisters who basically have different opinions on love and what they're looking for. I gave this a 5 out of 10. It definitely wasn't bad by any means. I was just very neutral about it. Like, I'm glad that I read it, but I'm probably never going to reread it. I think there's a certain sense of satisfaction once you finish a classic, and I think that's what I was mostly feeling. Like, there wasn't anything I really disliked strongly about this. Like, I did find it a little bit almost bland, but that's because I don't really tend to gel with this kind of novel anyways. But I'm glad that I read it, and it was definitely okay. I did try to read Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters right afterwards. I got about halfway through. Actually, let me check. I wrote it down in my handy dandy reading journal. See? My handy dandy reading journal. I temporarily DNF'd the Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters at 163 pages out of 340, so about halfway through. I think it was all of the really dry parts of this book with just extra information added in that I didn't really care about. But overall, this book, I finished it, 5 out of 10. Check it off the list. Next, I read Therithmatist by Sanderson. I gave this a 9 out of 10, and this was my book of the month for the month of July. So I have a full-length review. If you want to check out that, I will link it up in the cards and down in the description. But this is a young adult story about a boy named Joel who's really obsessed with the Rithmatists, which are the magic users in this world, and he's unable to become one, and then he gets wrapped into like Rithmatist politics, and there's murders, and it's super cool. Sanderson is like the king of like unique magic systems, and this one's magic system is chalk based, like actual chalk. Like there's literal 2-dimensional chalk monsters called like the wild chalklings that murder people and attack people, and the Rithmatists make like these chalk defenses and their own chalklings, and they're basically soldiers whose main purpose is to defend against these chalk monsters. But it doesn't like, it's not as goofy as it sounds. Just explaining it that way kind of makes it sound kind of silly. But this book is so much fun, a little bit confusing at times, but still a really, really great read. And of course it has the classic Sanderson. I think I know where it's going, but I'm wrong. So like right here you'll see I tabbed it because there's like just a little line that just like the word choice. I realized, I'm like, oh, wait a second. I think this is tied to that other little throwaway line back near the beginning of the book, and I think that I just solved the mystery. I am so smart. I have outsmarted Sanderson. And I didn't. I was wrong. He was on to me. It was just, that's what I love about Sanderson, is like trying to figure out what's going on while also just dodging all these freaking curveballs he throws at you, and like he hits me every time. But this was so much fun, very enjoyable read. I will say it ends on a pretty big cliffhanger. Like the mystery is solved, but then they introduce something else that kind of really sets up for the sequel, which hasn't come out yet. And in 2015, his publicist announced that it would be done in 2017, but it's now 2019 and there's been no update. So that's a little bit annoying, but it was a good enough book and it stands on its own well enough. But I would like to have a sequel someday, but as it is, this one, an excellent book. Next, I listened to the audiobook for Eldest by Christopher Paolini. This is the second book in the Inheritance Chronicles, so the Eragon books. I gave this a 7.5 out of 10. I'm reading basically the whole Eragon series for one of my reading blank series as an adult for the first time series that I'm doing, so I'll go pretty in depth in my thoughts then, but overall, I just had issues with the pacing, and it feels like it, how do I say it? Basically, it just felt really like thrown together. The writing was really sloppy in places. Like, a lot of times the character will have a discussion that's way too obviously just to tell the reader something, or like the character will be like thinking out loud to themselves, and it's basically just explaining things to the reader that like we know we picked up on, and it's written as if the reader was kind of dumb. Hi, comment. I'm sorry. I'm not petting you enough. But it's okay. But I really just don't think that he has enough faith in the reader. Like, some of the things that are like overly explained, it's like, yeah, I know. Like, I figured that out. You basically said that. I can't really think of specific examples right now. I don't have the physical books to like flip through for an example. But I just wasn't like a huge fan of the writing style. And I also found, in this one specifically, like the world building, which is really lacking. Like, it almost felt like the plot expanded too fast for the world building to keep up with. Like, they go to all these different places and like you're getting all these like pieces and like things become relevant to the plot. It's like the opposite of info dumping. Like, I think maybe the author was too nervous about info dumping, and so they just kind of like held back on a lot of things, but the world just didn't expand properly, and I don't know, I wasn't super fond of it. Story itself was definitely okay. I think that there were some things that I wasn't like super excited about, but hey, comment. I don't want to get too into the plot because obviously as the sequel this will be very spoilery for the first book, but the writing style just didn't quite mesh with me, but the plot itself was okay. After that I read the third book, which is Brisingr. I listened to the audiobook. I still don't quite know how to pronounce it. But the third book, there's a picture there. You know what I'm trying to say. This one I gave a 6 out of 10. I had a lot more issues with this one. I found the writing got worse. Like, I don't know, the pacing just, I really didn't like. There's a lot of also focus on characters that I just really didn't care about. Specifically in this one, a couple things that bothered me was there's a couple scenes from Saphira's point of view, Saphira's the dragon, and a big part of the world and her character is that dragons aren't just like dumb animals. Like, dragons are so highly intelligent, and it's like a big focus of dragons is how intelligent they are. And you know, like Eragon asks Saphira for her advice all the time because she's so smart and so wise, and like also you have so many like dialogue scenes like from Saphira, so like you know her character, you know she's smart, but she has a couple, no thank you, she has a couple like point of view chapters in this that are just written as if the author had no idea what her character was. Like, the language she uses doesn't match with her, and she just like is very clueless about some things that doesn't make any sense for her character. Like, she also refers to the humans as the two-leg round ears, even though she says human many times throughout the story, so she knows what humans are called. Like, and even some things like she doesn't like understand certain like social nuances and stuff, but she's the one kind of always like coaching Eragon in social situations. So like, it just didn't make any sense. I didn't like that. I also thought that there was a specific scene that I really didn't like. I'm gonna say major trigger warning for self-harm in this book, and glorifying self-harm. I'm going to explain it for the sake of context, but I'm not going to go into any specifics, so this isn't spoilery. But there's a scene where it's called the Trial of the Long Knives, and it's basically like a challenge you do to gain control of one of the tribes. And it's basically you take a knife and it's you and your opponent, and you just keep cutting your arm like wide and deep, and whoever gives up first loses. Like, it's basically a self-harm game of chicken. And I really didn't like it. I thought the amount of detail they went into was like potentially really triggering. They like glorified it in a way. Like, it made it sound like cutting yourself was this like big heroic thing, and they focused on it so much throughout the rest of the book, and just like the way that they talk about it, I really didn't like it. I was really uncomfortable with it. So yeah, that one definitely left with a bad taste. And like I said, overall the writing style got significantly worse. The plot didn't really do anything for me. So this one has definitely been my least favorite so far. I just started the 4th and final book, but this one was definitely my least favorite. And like I said, I gave it a 6 out of 10. Then I read another like harmful and problematic book. I read The Pleasure of My Company by Steve Martin. This one, I included this in my like yay or nay OCD recommendations video if you want to have like more thorough thoughts. I'll link that up above and in the description. But this one is about a man named Daniel who has OCD. In the text itself, they just say he's neurotic, and they use the term insane, which I ranted about in my last video. Not going to rant about it again in this one. But this was so inappropriate. Like, his behavior is just not okay. He's obsessed with the real estate agent who is usually showing apartments across the street, and they've never met. He's never spoken to her. And there's a specific scene that I just found like really uncomfortable, that he decides to go for a run, and he's thinking about how, like, you know, as he's running and just looking so masculine and powerful, and how she won't be able to resist him, and like how she's going to instantly fall in love with him as soon as she sees him. And it's just like, it's really inappropriate. And the way that it's written is like, well, he's crazy, so it's okay that he has these inappropriate thoughts. Like, it's not okay, and it's not okay to use mental illness in that way. The plot itself didn't really make much sense. I didn't really like almost any of the characters. There's just so many problems I had with this book. It's not really well written. It's not a good representation of mental illness. I don't want to use the word problematic, but I think it's problematic. I almost feel, and I thought of this afterwards, it seems like a Steve Martin, if you don't know, is, you know, a famous actor. It almost seems like he got the story idea and like just doesn't have enough like education himself on these topics. Like, from everything I've read, I don't believe Steve Martin has any form of OCD or any like similar mental illnesses. I could be wrong. Obviously, I don't know the guy, but from what I've researched, I don't think that he has any personal experience with this. So I think he just thought like, oh, this is a really cool story idea, and because he's famous, nobody talked him out of it. Like, that kind of seems like what it is, because this book obviously didn't have a sensitivity reader. Like, I think they were just like, oh cool, famous guy, that'll sell, here's a book deal. And no one like thought to speak up to him and say, hey, here's the 10,000 reasons why you shouldn't do that, or why you should change all of these things. But yeah, overall, I would not recommend this book. And then, don't worry, I read another great book. I read Smile, Chewy by Savy. If for some reason you don't know, Savy is a fellow booktuber and author-tuber, and she writes children's books about rescue stories from real rescue dogs, and some of the proceeds go to help animal shelters. And I got this as part of her Kickstarter campaign, and it is just such a freaking cute book. Like, I love the art style in it. Like, it's so beautiful, and I love how like thoughtful this was. Like, this is honestly, like, I gave it a 10 out of 10. This is honestly the perfect children's book, because first of all, like, cute dogs, already getting all the bonus points, but it just has like an awesome message, and just like really like well done. Like, Chewy is Savy's dog, by the way. He has like scars on his face, and because he's a pit bull, he doesn't get adopted for the animal shelter for a while, and then he starts smiling because his owner finds him and thinks he's beautiful even though he has the scars. And it's just like super cute. And there's also like discussion questions in the back. I think it's just so great for kids. Like, the first discussion question is about Chewy's scars and how it makes him feel self-conscious. It says, have you ever felt self-conscious about your appearance? What are some ways you can overcome that feeling? Chewy learns that some people are afraid of pit bulls because they assume pit bulls are mean. This is called a stereotype. What are some other stereotypes out there? How can they be harmful to us? Before the shelter finds Chewy, he was homeless. What does it mean to be homeless? How do people and animals end up in this situation? What are some ways we can help? Such like well-rounded discussion questions, and I like that I found it's written in a way that like kids can understand, but it's not talking down to them. Like, it's that perfect balance. So I highly recommend this book for any dog lovers or any kids or anybody who loves Savy. Like, check out these books, they're amazing. My mom actually just ordered Just Me Ringley because I was telling her about this, and we were at the animal shelter at the time, and she just fell in love with the idea. So I'll read the next one and I'll let you know how it goes. So yeah, thank you, Savy, for giving me a 10 out of 10 book after that couple of not so great reads. Next, I read the first book in the Chevaliers series by Anne Robillard. This is a, as you can tell, French fantasy series. I've owned this for like a million years and just never got into it, so I'm reading through the series now. It was okay. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Basically, it's about these knights and there's monsters coming and they have to defend the whole kingdom and etc. I found this it had a lot of potential, but it wasn't well written. Like, for most of this book, basically the knights have split up and they're all going to the different kingdoms in the land and warning them that the monsters are coming and you have to help us defend, and it's just that over and over and over and over again. Like, this knight goes to this kingdom, has this conversation with this king, the end. This knight goes to this kingdom, has this conversation with this king, the end. And like, nothing really happens in any of them. Like, it's just a different world. Another thing that might just be me, the names in this, like, there's almost no rhyme or reason to the names in this one. Like, the first one is Whelan, and then you have Bergeau, Chloe, Dempsey, Falcon, Jason, Santo, Briges, Buchanan, Wanda, Kevin. Like, it feels like a lot of them are placeholder names, if that makes sense. But yeah, this book it had potential, but it was just so repetitive. I have heard that the second book is better and the like repetitiveness stops, so I'm still going to continue with the series. I just need a minute. And the last book I read in the month of July was the audiobook for The Murder of King Tut by James Patterson. This one is a like historical mystery. It was okay. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I really like Egyptian history and mythology, and I'm really into all that stuff, so I found that really interesting. Basically, the premise of the book is that James Patterson says that he's, you know, uncovered like the mystery of what happened to King Tut and all this stuff, and like, he didn't. Like, he just made up another theory about it, which I mean, like, is okay and all, but like, it takes place, there's kind of 3 different stories going on. It's some scenes of James Patterson actually writing it and, you know, researching and discovering these things. There's some scenes of, his name isn't in my head right now, one of the main like Egyptologists who's like looking for the burial sites and everything. And then the third one is, of course, like the Egyptian history timeline of King Tut and his short life. And I don't know, like, it was okay, but I could have just read 2 Wikipedia articles and gotten the exact same experience and the exact same enjoyment. If you happen to own the book and you like Egyptian stories, then definitely read it, but don't go out of your way to pick it up. Like, you're not missing anything, it's nothing memorable. Like I said, just read the 2 Wikipedia articles and you're fine. So those were the 8 books that I read in the month of July. Overall, it wasn't a great reading month. Like, I had a lot of very meh books, but I think a lot of that is because for the second half of the month, I had already made my TBR for my newts, and all of the books I was really excited to read, I put on that TBR. So I was kind of reading some books that like I wasn't as excited to, kind of just to like tide me over until the readathon started. So I think that probably has something to do with it, but actually right now it's the 28th as I'm filming this. So in a couple days I can start reading my newts TBR, and I think reading so many like subpar books has really helped get me excited for all the books that I'm like really looking forward to on that list. So I think it ended up okay, and I still had a couple of really great reads, so overall it was an okay month and I can't really complain. But that is all I have for today. If you guys enjoyed this video, please hit the like button to let me know, and don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of my reading. I post videos every Wednesday and Saturday, but it's probably changing to Wednesday and Sunday soon. But always reading and writing related and whatever else I come up with. So I hope to see you guys next time, and until then, have a great day. Bye.